Happy Thursday morning, everybody. I am Matt Scalisi. I'm joined here by Ben Flanagan, and we are back for another episode of Bammers, getting very, very close to doing one of these in season for the first time, which we're excited about. I'm have to say, Ben, we have gotten the level of audience participation we hoped we could get with this show, and then some. There has been a tremendous amount of regular comments. I mean, I'm starting to learn some of your names for good reasons every week out there in the comments, but more and more people coming in here and doing this every week, and I love to see it, and I'm excited about doing that during the season. I'm excited to hear you guys sort of jump in here with us every week and talk about the game that just happened, the game coming up. We have not had a chance to do that with you guys yet, so I think that's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, super exciting, and we're going to be talking a lot about a lot of like fan-oriented things today. And Matt, we haven't heard whether or not they're going to allow tailgating in 2021 this year, but it was absent all season in 2020. And as somebody who goes out into the tailgating scene, either as a participant or as a journalist, it was always such a vibrant, just like amazing, unique atmosphere, one of the best in college football. And to just see an empty quad and just really an empty campus pretty much in 2020 was really eerie. It didn't feel right. And that's true about so much of 2020, certainly with COVID just hanging over everybody and everything. But its effect on college football is pretty vast, and hopefully we'll see a version of the college football season, including the pregame and postgame, that people are more familiar with this season. So here's hoping.
Well, we already know there's going to be a lot more people in the stadium. We know, being outside is still a relatively safer activity than a lot of other stuff we could be doing on our Saturdays. So we'll see. We'll see what it's going to look like. But tailgate culture, obviously, always a big part of being an Alabama fan. And thank you, Gary. We're glad to have you on the show. But what we're going to talk about today, Ben, is the specifics of that. I know you mentioned that it's a part of your job to go out there and sort of capture what the scene looks like out on the quad every week and the other areas of campus. But it's honestly one of the most colorful and interesting parts of the experience. And I often tell people, who've never been to a game in Alabama and don't really know anything about big time college football, that's what will kind of really blow you away more than anything is when it's before you ever get in the stadium. You'll show up and see that this is an entire day. I mean, it is a festival like atmosphere all day long. And it to me probably is as associated with college football as a cultural thing as anything that happens on the field. It's probably what I spent more of my time doing growing up than going to football games, was just going to things like this, spending all day long in Tuscaloosa, walking around and seeing the people.
Yeah, I'm always jealous of everybody when I'm out there taking photos or video or whatever, just doing work assignments, because you hear Nick Saban talk about it a lot. Like, I don't even know what a tailgate is. I've never been to one. So maybe one day after I'm done coaching, I'll get to go enjoy a tailgate for the first time.
Surreal to imagine him being at a tailgate. Yeah,
it really is. I don't think I don't think it'd be a good fit, but who knows? Maybe he should try it. But I feel the same way to a degree, in that, like, when I'm out there shooting, like, I'm out there and I'm embedded in it, but I'm not, I'm not under the tent, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like, I'm more of an observer. I'm more of an outsider watching everybody have the best time they can before a game. And I mean, I think that is really, it's a sweet spot for a lot of fans, and it's something they really look forward to, those 7 Saturdays out of the year in Tuscaloosa, to hit the quad or wherever on campus and celebrate with each other, unify over this thing that is Alabama football, that really does bring people together. And I think that if they allow it this year, and they feel like they can do it in a safe way and keep people safe, like you said, being outside is a much safer option, and that's where tailgating is, then I think it's going to be an enormous celebration for people. I think people are eager to get back into the tailgating mix, and people will just be relieved and to get that pre-COVID feeling again, or that version of college football game days in Tuscaloosa again, will be an enormously satisfying feeling.
I think so. And I think this is the time when a lot of folks are already sort of planning what their serious tailgaters already have their situation. They know where they're going. They have their spot picked out. They know how they're going to do game day. And, I think that's part of why I picked what I wanted to talk about this week, which we're just going to kind of go through the list, Ben, of questions that an elite level tailgater would be asking themselves right now and what we think about it. These are our tailgate opinions, our rapid fire questions about tailgating in Tuscaloosa. We definitely want to hear from you guys who are watching. Throw it in the comments and tell us your answers to these. Ben and I are going to give you our answers, but if you guys give us your thoughts on any of these topics too, we absolutely will pop them up on screen. We actually have from Dana, who says mostly a Blazer fan, but we have our own tailgate culture. And I will say UAB tailgate culture, very heavily based on a long lost version of Alabama football tailgate culture, because I also grew up going to a lot of games at Legion Field. And that was, in its own way, it's kind of a whole different scene just by the nature of where you are and where you have to set up. But I can definitely remember the tailgate scene for Bama games at Legion Field, and it was kind of a whole different vibe than what you get in Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, absolutely. And, tailgating has been something that's been on my mind now for a few months, because we've mentioned here before the podcast Bammers, Matt, will be back pretty soon, hopefully within the next couple of weeks. And one of the episodes will be about tailgating, or the tailgating ban in 2020, and sort of like what that was like for people who really live and die by tailgating. And like they look forward to it every year and put so much of themselves, so much of their time, money, and resources into making it happen for not only themselves and their families, but for other people who are looking to have a really rich communal game day experience. And just the absence of that was just, like I said, so eerie and surreal for so many people. And to get that back will be amazing. So look out for that episode and others on Bammers coming soon on AL.com and wherever you get your podcasts.
For sure. We're excited to hear more Bammers, the podcast episodes, especially regarding tailgating. Let's get into our tailgate discussion here, Ben. And we got to start off the top. I mean, it's the basis of the whole thing. It's the excuse we use to even set up these big elaborate tailgate setups. It's food. And I want to know, Ben, what is your sort of platonic ideal of a tailgate main course?
I mean, it's about keeping it simple, I think, but you have your tailgate mainstays, right? Your game day mainstays. You've got pulled pork, really pretty much any type of barbecue. People love chicken fingers at tailgates. Yeah. Grilled hot dogs are always a no-brainer, but it's also really fun to think outside the box at a tailgate. So, like, for instance, opposing teams often inspire Alabama fan tailgates on those particular game days. So, like, when LSU is in town, people might have gumbo and jambalaya, corn dogs, maybe. When Arkansas is in town, somebody will roast a hog. When Florida's in town, they'll fry some gator and they'll have some more seafood. I'm personally hoping whenever Texas comes to town, when they're in the SEC, we get some of that Austin brisket that I've never had before. So that'll be great. But Matt, I want to go back to one of my most memorable tailgating experiences. It was back when AL.com was doing the tailgate of the week. And I found this group called Bama's Italian Tailgaters. And it was this group of Birmingham families whose kids had either attended or recently graduated from the University of Alabama. That day, Matt, and I went and featured them. They were the nicest people in the world, as you might imagine. So welcoming. They offered me this just huge plate of food. They had baked ziti pasta. They had chicken parmesan meatballs, regular meatballs. They had Italian sausage, muffaletta sandwiches, baked eggplant, biscogis, Italian salad, Italian nachos. I mean, Italian cookies. So like all things you just would not expect at a tailgate on the quad. But that's what made it so special. Like, so my what I would encourage people to do is just never be afraid to think outside the box, but also keep it simple.
Yeah, I like Dana's comment there about the pluses of playing a bird related team for sure. Yeah, I grew up. I mean, look, I'm obviously, I have an Italian background. I'm a big fan of the sausage and peppers vibe in general. I grew up with sort of the tailgate food, the ultimate tailgate food being ribs. And I think as I've gotten a little older, I've realized that there's some logistical issues with eating ribs at a tailgate before a football game. You can pull it off. Plenty of people do. But I'm generally these days a little bit dressed a little bit nicer because I'm going to go work, even though I might visit some of my friends at tailgates before football games. But I think it's real basic, and it's not very adventurous. But I think if I had to pick one thing to build my tailgate around, I'm probably going chicken fingers. And my reason here is because you can get creative with it because you can do a bunch of sauce, right? You can bring a bunch of different sauces to the table, but also chicken fingers really don't have to be warm. Like chicken fingers are just as good cold, I would argue. And I think that's a key to a tailgate food too, is you can do the chafing dish thing. You can do the thing where you keep the little fire under it all day, but generally you're going to want something that holds up, that like is still okay to eat if it's been out for like 6 hours, right? Especially if you got a night game.
Yeah. Look, they're great. Like I've never
You don't
had
want mayonnaise based food. I would say that.
I've never had to use more self-control than when I was at somebody's tailgate and I saw like 3 buckets of Guthrie's chicken fingers right there. And I just didn't want to be the guy who basically emptied one of the buckets because, I mean, that can get really quick and those can disappear fast. So you're right. I mean, it's just one of the best grab and go things that's filling, tastes great. And like you said, you can basically have it anytime. In terms of like the burners and stuff, people can get very elaborate in their tailgates if you walk up and down the quad and elsewhere.
Because people have specialty built trailers that are like smokers and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, people throw around the term well-oiled machine a lot, but it's true for a lot of people. There are some professional tailgaters out there.
For sure. All right, Ben. This one is a little bit. I mean, this is very specific, and I don't want. I'm hesitant to do it because I don't want to give away some kind of special secret for anybody who's got something figured out that nobody knows about. But I want to talk about best tailgate spot, and we can make this more general if you want. Just like there are sort of these little sub areas, if you will, all over campus. That have cropped up and become kind of their own little tailgate communities. And, I think everybody obviously thinks about the quad, but even within the quad, right, there's like different little sections of it. So if you gotta pick one area where you get to set up your tailgate spot, where are you going on campus?
Man, that's tough. I mean, there are a lot of options, but I mean, look, if you have good friends, food, good weather and shade, it's really hard to pick a bad spot on campus. I've been to tailgates on the outskirts of campus, either near the Strip, out by the Student Health Center, by BB Comer and Woods Quad, like all of which were outstanding tailgates. But the answer is the quad. The answer is the quad. It's the epicenter of tailgating in Tuscaloosa. And that obviously covers a lot of ground, like you said, but there's really nothing quite like it right there under the trees, really on the northwest portion of the quad. That's the most electric spot, I think. Now, if you get to that uppermost northwest region, you're sort of wandering into this treacherous student tailgating terrain.
Right.
So I would advise people to be very careful when they do that. But this is where the seasoned tailgaters are, where you'll get the best sights and sounds and smells. So basically, if you're facing Gorgas steps, the Gorgas Library steps, you're just going to hitch a left and walk your way towards Reese Pfeiffer in the stadium, just sort of down that diagonal path towards University Boulevard, and you'll get an amazing dose of what tailgating is all about in Tuscaloosa.
Jerry Black suggesting away from the porta potties. I think that's a good suggestion for sure. I'm with you though. I like that. I like that you bring up that dividing line where it's really I can't think of the street off the top of my head, but there is that spot where it goes from quad to there's that sort of the classroom buildings that are leading up to the stadium, that block of classroom buildings. Mm-hmm. That seems to be kind of where it gets the intensity of the partying takes a little bit of a leap if you get over in that direction. That's more of like maybe walk your kids up to university instead of that way. But it is funny how those different areas kind of take on those different vibes. And I definitely have more experience being in that part, like that real sort of dead center of the quad where it's a lot more alumni, older experienced tailgaters. They've really like been in their spots for a really long time. Some of them just come for that. Some of them don't even go in the game. And if you're out there during a game, it's pretty loud. It's pretty active of people just watching the game from out there.
Yeah, and it's just amazing. I mean, you can say this about Alabama football fans generally, but you get folks who are just really from all walks of life, and that's true about tailgating too. I mentioned the Bama's Italian tailgaters earlier, but I mean, if you just walk up and down the quad, you will see such a diverse group of people celebrating and coming together for this thing, for Alabama football and really tailgating, this one thing that unifies them, like I said, for like 7 Saturdays out of the year, and really a little bit more than that the longer the season goes on. But it's really a sight to behold just how many people gather there, all of this different activity under all of these different tents. There's just always something different under every tent, and everybody is, for the most part, very cordial, very genial, and everybody's celebrating this thing. That's the anticipation that builds, especially before the big games. Like if game day happens to be there for like an Alabama LSU game, it's real. There's really not a bad spot on campus.
For sure. Kristen, I want to mention real quick here, Kristen Saban-Cetus asking who has the best food on the quad. So if you have a nominee, please throw it out there for Kristen. Ben mentioned the Bama's Italian tailgaters earlier, who are on you would say they're in the northwestern portion of the quad, right?
They're definitely the north. I would say more of like the west central spot. Yeah. Like they're a little more towards like the center, I guess, if you are kind of in the western part of the quad. But I'll tell you what, like, and I think we're going to talk about stuff like this, like more game day food oriented conversations as the season goes on.
For sure.
But this isn't necessarily tailgate. But I mean, I just want to give a shout out to Big Bad Wolf's like barbecue, like those folks on the strip that make the barbecue nachos. I have to get that at least once a year. And if that might not technically count as tailgate food, but I mean, that's as good a game day food as you're going to get. So to answer her question, if I can't answer a specific tailgate necessarily, that's at least one item pregame that everybody should get once a season.
A follow-up from Kristen here, just on going into individual categories. I honestly think this is a separate show. I feel like maybe you guys need to submit some as we get into the season. Maybe that can be a thing we do, Ben, is people send us photos of their tailgate food setup, and we will throw out a tailgate of the week here on the show and highlight somebody doing a good job with it.
I'm always looking for unique tailgates when I'm out and about pregame. I've got my camera. I want to take good photos of like the best food that I see, unique things. Like I mentioned before, we may reintroduce the sort of like tailgate of the week feature that we did a few years ago, especially if tailgating comes back in 2021. Like I said, if it comes back, we don't know yet if it will, but here's hoping.
This is moving away from the specific spots, but this is still a very relevant tailgate related topic because you have to plan your whole day around this when you do it. Best kickoff time, and I'm saying this if you're going to the game. If this is a home game, we're going to Tuscaloosa. What is the ideal kickoff time if you're going to spend your day in Tuscaloosa tailgating?
Yeah, I have to separate the parts of my brain here because this contrasts with my tailgating enjoyment part of my whole experience, because I think this might be a little controversial, Matt, because I'm not going to say 2:30 p.m. Obviously, that's the coveted SEC on CBS time slot. That means that you're in the conference's game of the week, basically, according to the network. For me, the 2:30 time slot takes over your entire day as a fan if you're going to the game. Like, you barely have any time to enjoy the 11 o'clock games before you have to go park, tailgate. Hopefully there's a TV and you can watch those games maybe. Before you know it, you're heading into the stadium when it's a 2:30 time kickoff. And by the time the game is over, the primetime games are about to start. You're either on foot, you're packing up your tailgate, you're walking to your car, you're dealing with traffic, weaving in and out of that, hoping to get home in time for maybe the second half. So for me, Matt, if I want my day to be as easy and efficient as possible, I love the 11 a.m. kickoff, Matt.
This is a controversial opinion, Ben.
Listen. That's strictly from the vantage point of a day that has a stacked lineup of games that I want to watch on TV, right? With 11 a.m. kickoffs, you get to wake up, watch your game or go to your game first thing. And then if you're an Alabama fan, probably win that game, let's be honest. And then you just get to enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Like, you get your day back. You get to watch all these other great games. You finish that 11 a.m. game, you get your Saturday back. It's all right there in front of you. Like, you could either run errands, you could drive through campus in the afternoon if you want to, just unheard of on a game day. Listen,
we got big controversy here.
Listen, it's just an amazing feeling to have it out of the way so you can enjoy the rest of the day. Now, that said, okay, if we have a primetime game, I want a 6 p.m. kickoff. Like, anything later than that.
Walter Hunt voting for the 6
p.m. Walter gets it. Anything later than that, and then I'm yawning before I sit down in the stadium. Like, after all that we've been through throughout the day, with 6 p.m., you start at a reasonable hour. You get the benefit of the Bryant Denny light show that everybody knows and loves at this point, the night game atmosphere, and then you get home in time to pass out during the first quarter of the Pac-12 game that's on.
Yeah, Scuba Steve going with the 3:30. We have another vote for 11 a.m. kickoffs suck. I like this. Now this is a little bit of a nuanced answer here, and I appreciate this. 5 p.m. first half of the season, 2:30 second half of the season. That is a good point to make, that the heat really, the weather really affects what temperature time you want, because those 11 a.m. games are brutal when it's early in the season, because the heat, especially when you're getting into the third and fourth quarter, it's absolutely brutal to get out there. If I probably am still traditionally a guy that just likes the 2:30 kick. It feels like a big deal, and I still get home at a decent hour, but like you said, I do get that it limits your time to enjoy yourself in the morning. If I was gonna do anything other than 2:30, I like that early evening kick. The thing that I probably hate the most of anything are the 8 p.m. Central kickoffs. That should not be happening in the Central Time Zone. That is outrageous. The games are usually over after midnight. It is absolutely brutal on everybody. I'm definitely more like several people here have said, I'm a fan of that 5 p.m. slot to kick off, 5 p.m., 6 p.m., something like that.
Embrace the 11 a.m. kickoff, folks. Like, I know that we joke about the breakfast with the barn all the time and everything, but look, they have to do it. Alabama should have the luxury to do it, the option to do it if they want to. If we got better stuff to do for the rest of that day, you know what I mean? But what's better than going to an Alabama game, though? I guess you would say
breakfast tailgate is great, and I will say this doesn't affect most of our audience, so you guys can get mad at me for bringing it up. But in terms of being in the press box for a game, 11 a.m. isn't the worst thing in the world, because Alabama usually gives us a pretty good breakfast setup up there. Sometimes they'll even have a guy up there making omelets for you. So I shouldn't bring it up. I don't want to seem like an elitist liberal media member up here, but it's not a bad setup for sure for a morning kickoff. But yeah, no more 8 p.m. That's ridiculous. Yeah. 8 p.m. kickoff is, like Ben said, that's for the Pac-12, man. Get that out of here. Yeah. Ben, we've already mentioned a couple of options for this, but I still want to go through it. Best post-game meal. And to me, this is kind of a thing, especially when sometimes I get to hang around in Tuscaloosa after the game, but sometimes very often this is a thing that I'm grabbing on the way out of town, right? Maybe I'm stopping somewhere. Now you're a Tuscaloosa resident, so this is a different experience for you. But I think for a lot of us, we're trying to get back on the road. We've packed the car up. You want to grab something maybe on your way back to wherever it is that you're from, leaving Tuscaloosa. So that's kind of what I'm going for with this topic.
Yeah, you're going to be able to speak to that a little better than me. Don't go anywhere on Lurley and Wallace. I can tell you that.
No, it's
Lurley and Wallace
there,
Boulevard.
Yeah.
I mean, that place is going to be so packed. I mean, pretty much any drive-through between Queen City Avenue and Lurley and Wallace Boulevard is a no-go in terms of. And if you're walking back on the Strip too, those places are going to be covered up. Look, leftover barbecue works for me, right? Like pizza works for me. I'm not too picky post-game, but if you tailgated and people didn't destroy your inventory, there's really no greater feeling than after a game, sort of like having that all to yourself and then like sharing it with your family after a long game day. But you really need a plan and get the food.
You gotta keep some reserves, yeah.
Get the food before or during the game. Have it waiting at home because you don't want to be standing in one of those lines going out the door at a restaurant on the Strip. I'm telling you, so you better be prepared.
I'll tell you what has become my kind of post-game meal on the way back to Birmingham. And maybe it's worse as campus gets bigger, as more students are here. But it's worked for me so far. And I've really become a cookout guy, Ben. I like hitting up the 15th Street cookout on the way out of town. You grab a bag full of absolute trash junk food. You're tired, you're worn out, you're probably a little sunburned, and you get the biggest drink you can possibly imagine. It's the biggest drink they can make that still fits in a standard car cup holder. And then you're getting, a cheeseburger or something, and your sides are like mini corn dogs, quesadilla. It's just a absolute party of junk food happening in a brown paper bag. It's already grease stained 5 seconds after you get it. That's, to me, I'm obviously not a big health food nut, so I can't advise this for you as a long-term thing. But if you just need some good junk food on the way out of town after a game, that's become kind of my move.
That's a good one. I mean, cookout is basically like concession food. So you're kind of keeping the game day thing going. And like our commenter Walter says there, I mean, it's pretty cheap.
Yeah. We got a Cajun grilled chicken sandwich recommendation.
Look, I mean, game day is not for health food nuts, like you said. I mean, you're not eating well on a game. I mean, you're eating well, but you're not eating right. You know what I mean? Like
no quinoa salads at game day.
No kale at the tailgate. Look, I mean, unless you want to, you can do that, but people might stare at you if you bring it. So yeah, just keep those things in mind. But yeah, I think that's a good choice. I mean, you might want to drive across town to, like you said, 15th Street, Northport. I mean, like there's going to be traffic pretty much everywhere. But if you want to find something, I mean, there are great places downtown and on the Strip. I mean, obviously, check them out. I mean, if you feel like you can withstand the line or there isn't a bad one, then definitely do that. But in terms of being efficient and trying to get home, yeah, you got to explore your options on your way out of Tuscaloosa. It's tough slugging.
Kristen also, by the way, throwing out a nice little hidden gem of the Bojangles in Cottondale if you're going back to Birmingham. So
I was going to say, yeah, try exits 76 and 77 on your way out of town. Like if you just want to like get out of Tuscaloosa, get out of there, rush out of there. There are a couple of exits on your way, at least northbound, that you can check out. And you might have some options there with fewer lines. If you want fast food drive-through.
Scuba Steve going with bacon-wrapped jalapenos as a post-game food. We're definitely not a lot of health food folks in this chat today.
Yeah.
So Ben, this one goes back to our kickoff time discussion. We touched on it a little bit, but hot or cold weather game day. Now, obviously, we're SEC fans. we're not used to having a lot of cold weather game days, but we've got about a month or so of them every year. If you've got to go with one or the other, which one is more tolerable to you?
I mean, look, the answer is in between, but that's not one of the choices, right?
No, we're going with would you rather burn or freeze?
Yeah. Look, I've been out there for some scorchers, Matt. That the one that always springs to mind for me was when Florida was in town in 2014. It was a blowout win, amazing performances by Blake Sims and Amari Cooper and Kenyon Drake. A ton of fun, but I had no shade, barely any cloud cover during that game. I was just cooking out there. Everybody was just cooking out there. So while you don't want to freeze, I think that if I had to pit between the two, I would probably go with the colder environment. And obviously the ideal weather comes around October-ish, late October, probably you hit that sweet spot of fall. But even in October, it can be a little warm. And the last thing you want to be is a sweaty mess, especially if you're eating a bunch of food and like you said, getting sunburned. But look, I've frozen my fingers off at games too. I mean, in the Saban era specifically, for me, there was no colder game than the 2010 Iron Bowl. For reasons other than the weather, but the weather, to be sure.
Too,
yeah, but the coldest, most miserable game, though, that I've ever been to in my lifetime had to have been that 2000 Iron Bowl, the one with all the rain and sleet, just this soggy, frozen, muddy, awful mess. And it was just compounded with this ugly 9-0 loss in one of Alabama's darker seasons, to be sure. That probably should have turned me off to cold games forever. But if I had to choose between the two, I'd probably rather be a little cold and wear something warm. People like to show off their winter clothes at football games.
It's true. It's more comfortable in the pregame for colder weather, I would say. But when you're at the game, I feel like you get some adrenaline going. You're experiencing all this intensity happening around you, and I feel like it makes the cold weather a little bit more, honestly, especially if you've really bundled up, you can actually find yourself sweating at those games a good bit. I would say I can definitely remember us having a very cold Iron Bowl in the relative recent history. I want to say, I mean, and it's an Alabama in even numbered years. So I'm thinking maybe it was 2018. What was the sort of shootout game, Ben, with Malzahn, where it was just back and forth the whole game? Was that 2018?
2014 was that the one with Blake Sims where they had to come back and it was like 55-44?
That sounds right. It might, yeah.
That was one
just passed too quickly.
In Tuscaloosa or
in Tuscaloosa,
yeah.
A sort of high scoring shootout type game. I remember being particularly frozen at that game. Other end of the spectrum, definitely the hottest I've ever been at a Bama game was the 2003 Alabama-Georgia game in Tuscaloosa. And it was, or might have been 2002 actually. It was brutal. There were people passing out all around me, people being carried out on stretchers. It was definitely a middle of the day game. And then I'm pretty sure that it went, it did not go Alabama's way. That was not a particularly great era for Alabama football, but just brutally hot. And you typically do get those, I feel like, in that sort of in October. We just sort of get a big flare up again of that summer heat. And, I guess I've gotten used to that. I think I am generally more accustomed to hot weather. I don't love it, but I'm just not built for cold weather. I'm a guy that does not have a lot of extra padding, I would say. And I get cold pretty easily. And it's tough for me to stand out there in that all day.
Yeah, well, at the hot games, I know that there's an initiative to sort of like cool Alabama fans down. They like create cooling stations. They had these huge multi-gallon coolers with cold water at different points in the stadium. They had sunscreen dispensers. So there are ways to protect yourself. Yeah, there are ways to protect yourself at those hot games because you're right. I mean, it can get so brutal. And I mean, if we're talking away from Tuscaloosa, I think the hottest game that I ever went to was in 2013, I believe, when we went out to to Texas A&M, the Johnny Manziel rematch at Kyle
Funny you
Field.
mentioned that, Ben. We actually, Kristen, once again, coming in here and mentioning that game, says they stuck Bama fans in the upper deck and direct sunlight, got sun poisoning. Good times.
I was up there too. It was not fun in terms of like, how we were feeling, and the game was stressful too. I mean, Alabama looked great. We're up 21 points at 2 different points in the game, but Johnny Manziel was just so good, and like no lead was safe. But thankfully, Alabama escaped with a win.
All right, Ben. Our last topic, and this one is something that I would say you have a particular expertise in. I have watched your game day photo galleries for years. You are extremely good at finding people who are interesting to look at, who are having a moment at game day. And that's a big part of it, right? You see all these people that you don't know. You're watching human activity all around you. You really feel it is filled with life to be at a full campus on a game day. You never feel more alive and human than when you're seeing all that activity happening around you. That's what I want to get for our last topic is, what is the best people watching spot on campus in Tuscaloosa? And again, this is something I don't want you to give away your trade secrets here, Ben, because you do this every week during the season where you're out there taking interesting photos on campus.
Yeah, I mean, I could be walking anywhere and run into somebody who was interesting and snap a quick photo and, tell a great story. But pregame, I'm probably going to go with the Walk of Champions right outside the stadium. I mean, I've been out there so many times taking photos throughout the years. I mean, you just run into a lot of characters, whether they're dressed head to toe in some wacky costume or they're just soaking up all the surroundings with the stadium and statues and Walk of Champions Plaza area. That's a place, and those are things where you'll find people where it really means something to them. Like Alabama football is really sentimental. The tradition means a lot to them. The lines that form at the Saban and Bryant statues are really fun to watch. I love seeing visiting fans there on the quad, taking in the tailgating scenes. Always love seeing their reactions, and especially when they mix it up with Alabama fans. And most of it is usually like really fun and cordial, and everybody's enjoying themselves and being nice to each other. But this season, Matt, there's a new wrinkle in terms of people watching, I think. I think the Tusca statue is going to be a fun place to watch fans enjoy this shiny new object on campus, right? And we've talked about that statue before on the show, and anybody who's been in Tuscaloosa knows about it, has probably already been there. That's going to be Selfie Central in 2021. It's already been Selfie Central since it went up earlier this year. I feel like anytime I drive by it, there's at least one group that's taking a photo. But other than those pregame spots, to me, I mean, the best people watching happens during the game. Like if you're inside Bryant-Denny Stadium, like if you can take your eyes off of the field for a few seconds or a few minutes and just look around, Alabama fans are so intense. They're so into the games. You see a different side of people, like at their most stressed and at their most competitive, but really at their happiest ultimately.
It is a thing that I think a lot of us don't do in the stadium at a game, because we're all obviously we're there to watch the game. We're interested in what's happening on the field. But on a few rare occasions when I've been working at games, I have decided to point the camera away from the field, pointed at fans, at the sidelines for the other players who are watching their teammates. It can be a really cool experience to do that, to let you, I mean, yes, you might not be watching when a big important play happens, but it's actually a really cool thing to do, even if that does happen. If you can ever let yourself do it, because you're watching all these people react at the same time to something, and it is, in some ways, you can tell what's happening by watching their faces. But it's a totally different way to experience a game and to sort of like feel what it's like to be in that atmosphere and to be aware of everybody around you and everybody that's experiencing the same thing as you. I would throw another spot in, Ben, about a block down from Tusca, and I would call this a more traditional people watching spot for entirely different reasons. But I'm going to say, if you want to see all aspects of humanity, go hang out right outside the fence of Galette's, and I think you will see a wide range of human behavior out there.
Yeah, for sure. That's a spot where I stop every game day. When I have my camera and I'm walking to campus, I usually snap a shot of just the Galette scene and sort of what it looks like. I mean, it never fails to be packed on game days, even in 2020, packed on game days. And yeah, I mean, people want those Yellowhammers. They want those souvenir cups they can get there. And that's just a place where people let loose for sure. And it's a sight to behold. So that's a good one. If you just want to stop and stare and watch and look at the majesty that is Galette's on a game day, have at it.
All right. Well, great contributions today from everybody. We ran a little long, actually, but that's always a good thing because we got tons of contributions from our regular viewers and some folks who are familiar names who we haven't had here in the comments before. So I'm gonna throw one more comment out here because it talks about our friend Josh Sneed from Walter Hunt. Josh Sneed from SEC Shorts came and hung out with us one tailgate, and I kind of scolded him about his skits about Bama. He's a great guy. I will say this: I am also friends with the SEC Shorts guys. They used to work with us here at AL.com, and I can confidently say everything they make is in good fun. And they're the kind of guys that if they make fun of you, it means they like you. So that's how I would always interpret that kind of stuff.
I love the SEC Shorts. My favorite is when they take shots at Alabama because you're an Alabama fan. Like, what can anybody really say that can get under your skin at this point? I mean, that's why this show's called Bammers, right? Like, that's what some fan bases call Alabama fans. It's like, Bammers, that's the best you got. Okay, we'll take it. We'll run with it. We'll embrace it. Now, I just want to drop my favorite SEC Shorts moment as it relates to making fun of Alabama fans. Do you remember that Halloween one where, like, every SEC character was opening the door and like giving candy to trick-or-treaters, and the Alabama guy took the candy from the bag of the trick-or-treaters instead of giving them candy? I loved it. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's become look, if you're gonna get made fun of, being made fun of for being the bully, for being the bad guy that always wins, there's probably worse positions to be in for sure. And I don't think it's a reputation that Alabama fans are too upset about. So, well, guys, the next time we do one of these shows, it's a game week. We're getting ready for a game. So we've made it through a long off season by talking about everything you guys like to talk about and discuss year round, which is what makes this fan base so special. And we're ready to actually start talking about a little bit of football. Now, there's plenty of other shows that get into the X's and O's of it. We're probably not going to go too deep on that as we get into the season, but yeah, we'll talk about the game some, and we'll talk about what you guys are interested in. Whatever is on your minds, we will talk about on Bammers, and we will be back next week to get you guys ready for the season opener against Miami. So Ben, thanks for joining me, and we'll be back again next week. Thanks to everybody for contributing today.